The sun had barely risen over Guadalcanal, but already the air smelled of gun oil, burning brush, and fear. U.S. Marines trudged through the mud, rifles slung low, their eyes fixed on the thick jungle ahead, because somewhere inside that green hell, Japanese soldiers were waiting. And they never stopped coming. But one man wasn't looking at the trees. Private First Class Daniel Duke Harrison knelt next to a crate of salvaged aircraft parts, his hands black with grease, his mind racing faster than the Zero fighters that terrorized them daily. He wasn't a gunsmith. Not an engineer. Just a mechanic who had once spent too many nights tinkering with engines in his father's garage back in Ohio. But war forced men to become things they never studied to be. The Marines were in trouble. Their Browning automatic rifles overheated fighting off relentless Japanese night assaults. The few machine guns they had were bulky, slow to position, and unreliable in jungle humidity. Too many Marines died before barrels cooled. But Harrison noticed something the others overlooked: the wreckage of American F-4F Wildcats that crash-landed near Henderson Field. Twisted metal, but inside their wings, the N/M 2.50 caliber aircraft machine gun. A beast designed to spit 800 rounds per minute into enemy aircraft. Harrison thought, if it can tear through steel at 400 miles per hour, what would it do to a human wave attack? The idea seemed insane. Aircraft guns needed complex mounts, electric ignition systems, and belt feeds that jammed outside perfect conditions. They weren't meant to be held, fired, or even touched on the ground. But Marines were dying. Desperation sharpens imagination. So one night, Harrison dragged a gun from a wrecked Wildcat under a camouflage tarp. With a hacksaw, scavenged metal brackets, and a stolen Jeep battery, he began converting the weapon, turning air supremacy into jungle firepower. A skeptical sergeant approached, arms crossed. "You think you can make that bird gun fire from the dirt?" Harrison didn't look up. "Give me tonight," he muttered, "and we'll make the Japanese wish they never set foot on this island." And for the first time in days, that sergeant smiled. "If you're crazy enough to try, Marine, I'm crazy enough to cover you." By dawn, Harrison wiped sweat and grime from his brow. The monster in front of him gleamed with deadly promise. And war was about to change. The morning heat of Guadalcanal rose fast, turning the air thick and heavy as soup. Harrison and a small team hauled the modified aircraft gun toward a ridge overlooking the jungle. It looked as wild as its creator, barrels scarred from flight, jury-rigged power cables, and a tripod made from welded shovel handles and scrap steel. Marines gathered around, whispering, "Thing's gonna blow his arms off," one muttered. "Or melt straight through to Australia," another snickered. Harrison heard them, ignored them. He connected the battery clamps, double-checked the belt feed. The gun's weight sank deep into the mud. This was no handheld weapon. It was a grounded thunderbolt. Captain Moran stepped forward, arms behind his back. "So, Harrison, this cannon of yours better be worth the trouble." The young mechanic-turned-mad scientist locked the charging handle with a metallic clack. "Sir, if it works, they won't get close again." The jungle was unnervingly quiet. No birds, no insects. Just the creak of trees shifting. The kind of silence that only meant one thing: the Japanese were planning something. The Marines took their positions. Harrison crouched behind the trigger rig he'd improvised from a spare Jeep switch. His thumb trembled, not from fear, but from anticipation. Then, like ghosts materializing from vines, shapes moved. Dozens of Japanese soldiers sprinted from the tree line, bayonets gleaming. Mortar rounds whistled overhead. A bugle wailed, a shrill, merciless command to charge. The Marines snapped into firing lines. Bullets cracked. Rifle bolts slammed back and forth. But the enemy kept coming, shouting, sprinting faster, closing the distance. "Now, Harrison!" He slammed the switch down. The weapon roared. Not a machine gun's chattering bark, but a continuous scream, a tornado of .50 caliber fury ripping into the assault. The barrel thundered, shells pouring like metallic rain. The ground quaked under the unending blast. Japanese soldiers were torn off their feet, bodies thrown backward as if by an invisible giant. Trees splintered, earth exploded. It wasn't a line of fire, it was a wall. The charging company faltered, then broke. Marines stared in awe as the enemy retreated into the smoking jungle, leaving silence and devastation behind. Harrison lifted his face shield, chest heaving. Captain Moran placed a hand on his shoulder. "Marine, you just turned the tide of this war." And the nickname spread fast. The buzzsaw. A weapon that could kill 20 Japanese soldiers per minute and save countless Marines. But the enemy wasn't done. Not even close. By nightfall, the entire perimeter buzzed with the same question. "Where's that Marine with the buzzsaw?" Men who only hours ago doubted Harrison now brought him coffee, extra ammunition, even spare parts they scavenged from wrecks. The machine had given them something scarce on Guadalcanal: hope. But with hope came attention. 2 officers from the airfield approached, crisp uniforms coated in dust. "Harrison," one began. "Command wants that gun tested again at first light." Harrison wiped sweat off his brow. "I need more belts. And cooling time between bursts, she runs hot." "We'll get whatever you need," the officer replied. "Just keep that thing firing." As they walked away, Sergeant Collins leaned in. "You know what this means, Duke? That I'm never sleeping again?" Harrison joked weakly. "No, this means you just volunteered for the front row of hell." He wasn't wrong. Japan had noticed. That evening, scouts reported Japanese troops massing again. Officers worried they were preparing a night assault, the kind that swallowed Marines alive. Darkness draped the island like a burial shroud. Crickets and frogs croaked a nervous chorus. Marines checked ammunition again and again, hands shaking despite themselves. Harrison sat beside the gun, his gun, stroking the metal, listening to its soft clicks and cooling groans. Every weld, every bolt, had his fingerprints on it. This weapon was no longer just steel and power, it was responsibility. "Think she'll hold?" Collins asked. "She has to," Harrison answered. "There's no backup plan." Midnight. A breeze carried the stench of rot and gunpowder from the jungle. Then, a single flare burst into the sky, painting the world red. And the jungle screamed. Thousands of voices, Japanese, charging forward in a human flood. The first grenades landed before the Marines could blink. Tracers carved fiery lines into the night. The ground trembled under boots and explosions. Harrison slammed the battery switch. The buzzsaw unleashed hell again. Its roar drowned out the war cries. Each second sent dozens of massive rounds slicing through bodies, shredding bamboo, ripping through the horde like a scythe through wheat. But this time, the enemy didn't break. They kept coming. More. And more. As the barrel blazed red and smoke thickened around them, Harrison realized something terrifying. The Japanese now knew his weapon existed, and they would do anything to silence it. The night turned into a furnace of gunfire. The buzzsaw spat flames in nonstop arcs, the barrel so hot it shimmered like molten glass. Shell casings piled knee-deep around Harrison, clinking and hissing as they landed on the scorched dirt. But something was different. The Japanese weren't charging recklessly anymore. They moved in zigzags, diving into ravines, crawling, snipers aiming straight for Harrison's position. A bullet snapped past his ear, slamming into the jeep battery and spraying sparks. He ducked down instinctively. Collins grabbed his collar. "They've marked you! You're priority number 1! Another round pinged off the tripod, the ricochet whining like a mosquito of death. Harrison's stomach nodded. For the first time, he wasn't afraid the gun would fail. He was afraid he would. "Cover fire!" Moran shouted. "Keep those sharpshooters pinned down!" The Marines fired blindly into the dark jungle. But snipers waited. Harrison peeked over the weapon. No movement, just whispering bushes. Then a muzzle flash. A sting of pain threw him sideways. The shot clipped his shoulder. He slammed into the mud, teeth rattling. Blood soaked into his sleeve. Collins dragged him behind a log. "You're hit!" I'm fine, Harrison growled through gritted teeth. The gun isn't. He crawled back up, one arm nearly useless, but the buzzsaw still stood. The enemy had stopped rushing. They crawled slower now, smarter, close enough to throw grenades. A thud. A metal sphere bounced to their feet. Grenade! Harrison grabbed it and hurled it back. A blast rocked the ridge. He felt the heat lick his face, the shockwave punched through his ribs. As the smoke cleared, rifles cracked from both sides. Marines yelled. The line buckled. The Japanese were pushing again. Moran crouched beside Harrison. We can't hold if that gun goes down. It won't, Harrison said, strapping his injured arm tight against his chest. You sure? Harrison grinned despite the blood dripping down his chin. She's angry now. He slammed the switch again, one-handed. The buzzsaw roared louder than ever. Bodies fell. The assault slowed. The line stabilized. The Marines lived. But in the smoldering aftermath, as medics wrapped his wound, Harrison noticed a chilling detail. One sniper's bullet had struck the barrel shroud, right next to a hairline crack. The weapon was reaching its limits. And the Japanese weren't stopping. They'd be back. Next time, they'd come with something bigger. Morning arrived like a mercy none of them deserved. The Japanese assault finally broke before sunrise, leaving the field scattered with bodies and bullet-torn trees. But victory brought no celebration, only silence, exhaustion, and dread. Marines hauled the injured back to makeshift aid stations. Harrison's arm throbbed, but he refused morphine. Pain kept him awake. Awake meant alive. He knelt beside the buzzsaw, inspecting damage. The barrel was scorched black, the shroud blistered with heat bubbles. And that crack, thin but growing, stared back like a warning. She's not gonna last another fight, Collins muttered. Harrison didn't answer. He already knew. Aircraft guns were designed for quick bursts in cold air, not hours of continuous carnage. If the barrel overheated again, it could rupture, turning his invention into a deadly bomb. Captain Moran crouched beside him. Command is sending word to the engineers in the rear. They want to copy your design, mass-produce this setup. Harrison's heart kicked. Mass-produce? A gun like this in every Marine platoon could rewrite the Pacific battlefield. But Moran's expression darkened. They also say you need to hold this ridge for 3 more days until replacements arrive. 3 days? Harrison whispered. In this war, that's a lifetime. The captain stood, his boots sinking into the mud. We can't lose that weapon. Or you. Marines scavenged more aircraft parts. One brought a salvaged water-cooling jacket from a wrecked .30 cal gun. Harrison tore it apart with frantic speed, wrapping makeshift tubing around the buzzsaw's barrel, then running water from canteens through the coil. It was messy engineering, unsafe, ugly, but brilliant. As he worked, a familiar fear gnawed at him. What if this miracle turned into a curse? What if they relied too much on this single gun, and if it fell silent, everything fell with it? Collins handed him a fresh canteen. You're saving lives, Duke. Don't overthink it. I'm not thinking about the gun, Harrison replied. I'm thinking about who comes next if this fails. Night crept in again. The jungle rustled with unseen movement. Flares waited to signal another wave. Harrison braced the buzzsaw, hands trembling on the trigger switch. 3 more days, he whispered. Just 3. The second night fell heavier than the first, ink-black clouds hiding the moon, the air thick with anticipation. Even the insects dared not chirp. It was the kind of silence that presses against the ears, warning that violence is about to erupt. Harrison's jury-rigged cooling system dripped steadily, water hissing as it hit the overheated barrel. He prayed it would hold. Then, the signal. A blinding flare cut across the sky. Drums thundered from the jungle. Metal tracks clanged over rock. Collins whispered, "They brought armor." A Type 95 Japanese light tank burst through the tree-line, cannon blazing. Shells tore trenches apart, tossing Marines like ragdolls. Infantry swarmed behind it, bayonets raised, voices roaring in fury. Take cover! Moran shouted. The tank fired again. Barricades exploded. The Marines scattered, firing wildly, but their rifles barely scratched steel. Harrison stared at the beast rolling toward him. The buzzsaw was not designed to fight armor, but nothing else could stop it. He aimed low. A burst of .50 caliber slugs punched into the tank's tracks, sparks flying like fireworks. Again. And again. Metal screamed. The tracks snapped. The tank lurched sideways, stalled. Its turret swung toward Harrison's position, searching for the threat. If it fired, half the ridge would disappear. Harrison didn't let it. He unleashed a deafening, continuous blast into the tank's side armor, thin plating meant for speed, not survival. The buzzsaw chewed through it like paper. The tank erupted in flames. A roar of cheers from Marines, short-lived, because the infantry kept coming. Wave after wave. Grenades sailed overhead. Mortar rounds cratered the defensive line. The buzzsaw raged, water steaming, barrel glowing molten red. Harrison's wounded arm finally gave out. He slumped behind the gun. Collins grabbed the trigger switch, screaming as he fired. Together, they kept the monster fed. Bodies dropped. The ground ran slick. But with each minute, the buzzsaw trembled harder, the crack spreading like a snake along its barrel. "We're close to a blowout!" Harrison shouted. "Then we go out with it!" Collins yelled back. The last wave faltered, then fled, leaving the ridge burning, littered with brass and broken rifles. Harrison collapsed, lungs clawing for air, ears ringing from the unending roar. They had survived again. But the damage was undeniable. The buzzsaw had maybe one fight left in her. Maybe. By dawn, smoke still curled from the shattered ridge. Medics dragged the wounded to the rear, while burial teams prepared shallow graves for those who would never see home again. The ground was a cemetery of twisted helmets and spent .50 cal casings. The buzzsaw sat silent, its barrel scorched, its cracked shroud barely clinging together. Marines passed by it with reverent looks, as if it were a holy relic that had spared them from damnation. But down in the jungle, eyes watched. A Japanese recon sniper lay camouflaged beneath branches and mud, his rifle trained on the prize. He whispered into a field radio. "The American demon gun is damaged. Tonight we take it." Far away, at the Japanese command post, a colonel listened grimly. He had lost hundreds of men in 2 nights. This devil's weapon was breaking the siege. If Henderson Field remained supplied, the entire campaign could collapse for Japan. Orders were issued. Capture the gun. Kill its operator. No sacrifice too great. Back at the ridge, Harrison's hands shook as he worked. He filed metal, rewired the firing switch, tightened bolts with teeth gritted against pain. His injured arm screamed every time he lifted anything heavier than a bullet. Collins crouched beside him. "You should let someone else fix it. No one else knows her like I do." Moran arrived with grim news. "Intel reports a full assault tonight, bigger than the last 2. They want you alive, Harrison, but they'll settle for the gun." He placed a fresh battery beside Harrison. "Command says evac is possible if it gets too bad." Harrison looked up sharply. "And leave everyone else?" "No chance." He leaned in close to the buzzsaw, whispering like to an old friend. "We started this together. We finish it." As the sun dipped below the horizon, fear and determination mixed with the scent of cordite and sweat. Every Marine knew tonight would be the worst yet. Harrison tied a strip of American flag cloth around the cracked barrel, a promise that it would hold. Collins loaded belts with trembling fingers. "Think she's still got fight in her?" Harrison nodded once. "Enough for one more miracle." The jungle rustled. A trumpet wailed. And 3,000 Japanese soldiers charged, the largest attack yet, determined to bury the buzzsaw forever. The night exploded. Machine guns rattled. Mortars burst in showers of dirt and flame. The Japanese charge surged like a tidal wave, bayonets shining, voices unified in a single, earth-shaking roar. Harrison's heart slammed in his chest. Fire! He hit the switch. The buzzsaw roared to life for what might be the last time. Its thunder rolled across the battlefield, lighting up the night with muzzle flashes so bright they looked like lightning striking in rapid succession. Massive .50 cal rounds tore through bodies, shredded trees, blasted apart anything that dared to move. But the enemy didn't stop. They climbed over their own dead, sprinted through bullet storms, hurled grenades in blind arcs toward the American line. A grenade landed inches from Harrison. Collins dove, boom! The blast flung them both backward. Collins rolled to his knees, coughing blood, but stayed firing the pistol with his good hand. They crawled back to the buzzsaw. Harrison's vision blurred. His wounded arm barely worked. But the gun still ate belts of ammunition like a starving beast. Round after round. Body after body. Then, a sound he feared more than any battle cry. A sharp, metallic snap. The crack in the barrel split wide open, a glowing, jagged wound. The weapon sputtered, coughing fire instead of breathing it. Harrison yelled, "Come on! Hold together! Hold!" He slapped the barrel housing, praying. His entire soul poured into that trigger switch. For one last burst, the buzzsaw answered, a scream of molten death that shattered the Japanese front wave and sent survivors dropping to the dirt. The ridge became silent under a cloud of smoke. Then the barrel detonated. A violent blast hurled Harrison back, tearing the air from his lungs, filling his ears with ringing silence. Shrapnel peppered the ground. Flames licked the twisted remains of the once mighty weapon. Collins crawled to him, shaking his shoulder. "Duke! Stay with me!" Harrison blinked, eyes glassy. He stared at the shattered gun, the monster he built, now dead at his feet. Marines rushed forward, launching a counterattack that finally drove the Japanese into retreat. The ridge held. The battle was over. But Harrison lay motionless, vision fading, listening to the distant echoes of war. His invention had saved the line. Saved Henderson Field. Saved thousands of Marines. But the price had come due. His final thought. It was worth it. Harrison woke to the sound of waves crashing softly on sand. A hospital tent. Gauze wrapped his shoulder like a cocoon. His face felt tight and burned where shrapnel had kissed him. Rows of cots surrounded him, filled with wounded Marines, some asleep, some staring blankly at the ceiling, some whispering prayers. Collins stood beside him, arm in a sling, grinning crookedly. "You didn't die. I told the doc you're too stubborn." Harrison tried to sit up. Pain stopped him halfway. "The ridge, did we? We held. Because of you." Moran entered, his usually hard features softened. He set a small wooden box on Harrison's chest. Inside, a newly minted bronze star medal. Below it, a typed commendation. For exceptional ingenuity and extraordinary valor. For turning an aircraft weapon into the most lethal gun Guadalcanal ever saw. For saving the lives of your brothers in arms. Harrison's breath caught. He expected pride, instead he felt something heavier. Not guilt, but grief. For the men they couldn't save. For the weapon that had burned so fiercely that it destroyed itself. He whispered, "The gun." Moran nodded. "What's left of it is being examined at the rear. Engineers are already copying your setup. We'll see buzzsaws across the Pacific soon enough." Harrison stared toward the tent opening, sunlight streaming in, the ocean beyond glittering with promise. The war wasn't over. Not even close. But the ridge stood. Henderson Field lived. And the Marines would continue the fight, with better tools, better chances, because one stubborn mechanic refused to accept defeat. Collins clapped his good shoulder. "You earned a rest, Duke. Try not to invent any more death machines while you're in here." Harrison chuckled, the first true laugh in weeks. "Depends if you let me near the tool shed." He leaned back, eyes closed, letting the sounds of the island wash over him, the island that had tried to kill him every night since he arrived. The buzzsaw was gone. But its legacy thundered on. Because sometimes, it only takes one insane idea. And one Marine. to change the course of a battle and save a war.